2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. I was out of town.
Okay, but I can certainly do that again. My name's Art Kodroff. I'm the controller for the Capital Improvement Board, also known as CIB. And we own the Convention Center, Lucas Oil Stadium, Victory Field, and Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Originally from Philadelphia area, but I've lived in Indianapolis for over 40 years now. My father was transferred when I was still in school. I attended Butler University as an accounting major and went on to IU for my MBA. And my outside interests are golf and cycling during the warmer seasons, of course. Then I'm also on several nonprofit boards, Treasures, Pathway to Recovery, and Aspire Higher Foundation. So, and I'm married, and my wife and I have a golden doodle puppy dog. And so that's a quick overview of me. I'm excited to be part of the Kiwanis Club and work downtown. Even though we're still working remotely, I come downtown about 2 or 3 times a week. So looking forward to the in-person meetings eventually.
Are there any Kodroff Thanksgiving family traditions we need to be made aware of?
Not really. We did a very small one this time. My wife's family was in Western Indiana. We usually go there, but we didn't do that this year. And I also need an hour of ethics, so I'm hoping that today will count as that hour of ethics for my continuing education requirement for the CPA. I don't know if I get to officially count that or not, but
I'll send you one.
Oh, okay. Oh, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I didn't see you there. I know Bill, because I'm also active in the Butler Alumni Association, which I know Trina and Bill and Graham Honecker through that.
I hadn't thought about that.
You're already very ethical.
No, thanks.
Yeah, for my life insurance license, we have to do 20 hours every 2 years, and mine is up in about 2 weeks. So I'll keep that in mind of the ethics CE also. We'll see what the insurance board has to say. But no, so the last time I looked at the Salvation Army bell ringing Google Doc, there was still one slot available, I believe, from 2 to 3 o'clock on Saturday with a Mr. And that's Friday, December 18th, so still a little ways away. I'm sure we'll be able to fill that. And in line with today's leave the gun, take the cannoli quote, Duke, if you can't find anybody to fly with you, call me. I'll be your wingman.
Okay, Eric.
Eric, I was going to tell you that it does qualify for law ethics, so you could use that. Say if the lawyers continuing legal education will take it for ethics.
Okay.
Some would say that's an oxymoron, but.
Only some lawyers.
So now, Greg Silver, before we have you introduce Judge Maggie a little later on, could you just give us a quick 30 seconds on how far you go back with Judge Maggie?
Maggie and I were I still work for the U.S. Justice Department, but Maggie and I were co-judges together on the panel, and then she was appointed by Frank O'Bannon to the Court of Appeals, where she's served so admirably. She's a friend of mine personally. Hi, Maggie. And I'm glad to introduce her. I'm just going to say a few good things about everything that's true about Margaret Robb. Hi, Margaret. Happy holidays, Margaret.
You too.
Maggie. And the trustee's office is still functional, and we're busier than ever. I tell you, you know what's going on. Yeah.
I thought bankruptcy was one of the most interesting areas of the law that I practiced, even though I haven't done it for a long time.
Well, it's a different perspective as a hearing officer than having to file it for individuals. But, I know you were in Lafayette. I know you work with everybody that we work with. But it's very important today more than ever, because the pressure on people is very, very, very bad. And what I hear stories of are pretty sad. And we're being thankful for what we have is the most important thing to me. And I think about other people all the time. Yeah. And how their stories are sickness and lack of insurance and layoffs and COVID. A lot of people have been not working any further from COVID, even from March. So you can imagine the pressure on them psychologically and physically, monetarily.
Yeah, and in our line of work, we have a lot of 85 to 95-year-old clients, and I think I've maybe beaten the point to death over 2020, but if we normally have a half a dozen fatalities over the course of a regular working year, we're up to about 3 dozen people. So just like what you're saying, the stress on the family, I would have never predicted 2020 to kind of materialize like this, and having the numbers spike again in December. We're still keeping our January, February, March 2021 plans fluid, where we're hoping to go back once a month in person and follow all state guidelines there. But yeah, every day it gets kind of tougher and tougher as we're trying to be very cognizant of playing our part stopping the spread. So Miss Trina has taken over the screen sharing. So looking ahead to next week, we've got Doug Hemmig, who is a community relation chair with a C-SPAN. So that'll be interesting. We've got Rabbi Sasso, December 17th. And then we've got our Christmas break, hoping to return in person at the Columbia Club for our annual awards and candle lighting, honoring Kiwanians who we lost in 2020. So again, we've got our annual bell ringing coming up. We're ringing at the Kroger on 71st and Binford this coming Friday. So I'll be ringing with Jason Burke. My parents will be after me. My wife is ringing at, I believe, 12 o'clock with Laura Berry. Again, we've got 1 slot left. If anybody has flexibility Friday, December 18th from 2 to 3, that'd be fantastic. You might consider giving to our club today in lieu of paying for lunch. Any amount would be appreciated, and we've got that PayPal link. I'd like to thank all our guests who are joining us, in some cases from across the country. And if anybody wants to chime in later and introduce themselves, we would appreciate that. Caitlin from the Salvation Army is here to tell us about the Angel Tree impact. So if Caitlin could step up. Yeah, we met really briefly, Caitlin, and my wife Lamita was mistaken for Taylor. And
okay, yes.
The first second we met, so I took that as a huge compliment. I'm not sure how Lamita took it, but no, you all did a fantastic job at the museum. But no, certainly I'll turn it over to Caitlin.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for helping out with Angel Tree this year. And I'm sure, as you've heard, Angel Tree, what we do is we meet with children and families in the Indianapolis area, and we ask them what their wants are and their needs are for Christmas. And this year we sat down and we talked with every single family, whether that was in person, socially distanced with all of our masks on and being safe, or whether it was over the phone. It was important to us that we heard everyone's story so they knew that they were loved, they were heard, and that there were people in the community that cared for them in this hard time. We then sent out a request to the community, you guys being part of that, and we asked for people to donate in order to get these children their requests filled for Christmas. So you all had the Kiwanis Club so generously donated about $9,000, which paid for 180 children who are living in poverty in Indianapolis area to receive Christmas gifts. So we are at this part of the process where we are getting all of the gifts back, and we are preparing for distribution day, and distribution day will be December 14th through 18th. And so we are so excited. I know the kids are anxiously awaiting Christmas and their gifts, and we have really enjoyed being able to pick out some of their gifts. Some popular gifts this year would be dolls and like sports equipment and just things that, you know, little kids love. So it's been really a pleasure to get to do that.
I appreciate that very much, Caitlin. And I will turn it over to Mr. Greg Silver, who will introduce our esteemed guest today, Judge Maggie Robb.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me? Yes, yes. Can you hear me all right, Eric?
We can. Sorry about that.
Great. It's a great honor to be able to introduce Judge Maggie Robb, the first woman chief judge of the Indiana Court of Appeals. I've known her for many years, and we work together at the U.S. Justice Department. I know her to be of integrity, reason, and humor, and she's going to talk to us about some considerations of ethics from the movie The Godfather. I wanted to say that she was appointed by a mutual friend of mine, Governor Frank O'Bannon, to the court in 1998. She's magna cum laude from the IU School of Law here, engaged in general practice in Lafayette, and that's how I think we knew each other before we became bankruptcy trustees. She's been president of the National Council of Chief Judges of the State Courts of Appeals. That's a very, very distinguished honor. And in 2018 was the Indiana State Bar Association Litigation Section's Judicial Civility Award winner. Judge Robb was retrained on the court by vote of the public in 2000 and 2010, and is married to a retired Purdue University professor, and their son is a commander on active duty in the U.S. Navy, and we wish him well for sure. And so it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and our colleague and our invitee today to speak to us about ethical lessons from The Godfather, Judge Maggie Robb.
Thank you. Now, if I can figure out how to share my screen, we'll be...
There we go.
Okay, there we go. What's the old adage? My father would love the introduction and my mother would believe it, but I appreciate it. It's always fun for me to try to find kind of interesting topics for ethics, and that was sort of how I got to doing this Godfather. Next year I'm going to do one on baseball and ethics, but I don't know that that will be quite as much fun as this. Okay, rule number 1. This was from Santino Corleone. We don't discuss business at the table. As you would expect, it relates to confidentiality. Confidentiality, I don't need to tell you, is important to business. It's sometimes why companies have non-compete contracts, trade secret contracts, rules about confidentiality, but it is the bedrock of a relationship. And it has been suggested that confidentiality is also important because your clients, the people with whom you work and deal, will speak much more freely if they know that what they tell you is not going to go any farther. The other thing is that you also risk the opportunity to learn a great deal from other people if they don't think they can trust the confidences. A friend of mine always likes to say, will the sun come up tomorrow if I just keep my mouth shut? And since it usually does, that gives her a good lesson. And it applies in all kinds of circumstances. It doesn't matter if you're out to dinner. It doesn't matter if you come home from work and your significant other says, how was your day? And you proceed to say something. It doesn't matter if it's a drink after work. You never know. The law is replete with ethics cases where people have innocently revealed information. And now with social media, it is a great deal easier defines civility as a trait connected with citizenship. And my, haven't we come a long way since then? It's important to remember that your dealings are not about you. They're looking petty. In the law, we have an old joke that says, when the law is against you, argue the facts. When the facts are against you, argue the law. And when they're both against you, just bang on the table and call the other side names. And I suspect that adage goes for any profession. But everybody knows what you're doing. And when you are in that situation, your situation is going to be judged by that old joke. And you need to decide what your legacy is going to be. You don't take a vote on what direction you take. It takes years to build the reputation. It may only take one mistake to erase all those years of hard work. It's okay to tell people something's not possible or you won't do it. It's okay to disagree with the other side, but don't burn bridges. You never know when a past dealing or a past person will be in a position to impact your life. You have the power to help that situation. A major CEO wrote a book that I recently read and said that the #1 motivator is the power of recognition. But that recognition has to be sincere. It has to be unequivocal. You need to reference something specific. It must be timely, and it must be both verbal and written. And I would suggest that doesn't mean an email. Get out that old stamp, US postal stamp, and write a note. So few people do, that when you do it, you will stand out. In 1744, George Washington, as a young man, wrote a book called The 110 Rules for Life and Living. And civility was an important part. I'm not going to read all 110, don't worry. But there are some that are so old that they are new. #1, treat everyone with respect. #3, be considerate of others. 82, keep your promises. And then there's one of my favorite quotes from Grantland Rice, perhaps one of the greatest American sports writers, when he wrote, "For when the one great scorer comes to mark against your name, he writes not that you won or lost, but how you played the game." Okay. #3, Tom Hagen. Mr. Corleone likes to hear bad news immediately. Communication. Answer phone calls, be honest with your clients, business associates. Honesty goes a long way, but I'm going to talk about honesty later. Don't promise what you can't deliver. Admit your mistakes. Your client needs to hear everything, but they need it to hear from you, not from someone else. And we all make mistakes. That's not the issue. The key is how you handle it when you do make a mistake. I don't think clients expect perfect. They expect us to work hard and be honest. And I remember Thomas Boswell, again, a great writer in terms of mistakes, said, if you do everything right every day, you'll still lose 40% of your games, but you'll also end up in the World Series. I read an interesting thing once about tips for a happy client. Improve communication, correspondence, phone calls, information sharing, handle money matters immediately, own your own mistakes, show appreciation. I don't mean flowers. Clients in situations, whether it's negotiations, it could be in the law, put a tremendous stress on people. And making your clients understand that you understand the situation they're in is the kind of appreciation that many clients really need and respect. Be selective. You can't take every problem, you can't handle every problem, and you can't take every issue. And be empathetic and be resourceful. I like to say that when you're going to be in a situation that's going to take over time, one of the best things you can do is to prepare an outline for your client. You may have to revise it from time to time, but when they have something in writing, something in hand that will tell them what they can expect to happen, what kind of timeline, what timelines you don't know, but in essence, where you're going and how this is going to proceed, it becomes much less stressful. And then there are people that Malcolm Gladwell called connectors. You may not have the answer, you may not have the ability to help someone, but you can refer them to someone. And when you refer them and that other person resolves the problem, you become a hero. You solve the problem without the heavy lifting, and you will get credit for resolving that situation. Rule number 4, good health is the most important thing, more than success, more than money, more than power. Work-life balance. Never forget, a balanced life is important. And now with this COVID, wellness issues are certainly in the forefront. But you need to take time for yourself and your family, time to recharge your batteries. That's important. Well, if you web surf the word mindfulness, there are really a lot of really interesting ideas about how to de-stress. You also need to learn how to say no. Someone once told me that the word no means nourishing oneself, and I try to remember that. But what does yes mean? You're extremely stupid for saying yes so much. And why do we say yes? We want to be cooperative, we want to be important, we want to be included. We all like to be the center of things. Me time is okay, so it's okay to say no. But if you say, give me some more time to think about it, you are probably going to be asked again. Or if you say next time might be better, there will be a next time. So if you mean you really don't want to do it, it's okay to say, thank you for asking, but I can't do it, or I'm not the right person. You need to be direct. Again, thanks for saying that you asked. You don't need to apologize. You really don't even need to give reasons. But don't lie. Don't tell them you're going to be out of town because somebody will see you in the grocery store. Practice saying no. Don't say you'll get back to them if you really don't want to, because you're going to have to say no the next time. And remember, time is finite. I know that's a shock, but it really is. And you have the right to say no. Create boundaries. You don't have to leave your phone on 24/7. And balance is important. It's important to have your own life and the usual things that they will tell you. Eat right, take personal time. Exercise is a great stress reliever. Take a vacation. I recently, because of COVID, took a staycation. And I stayed home, I turned my computer off, and I just had a really nice, relaxing time. I'd never done that in all the years I'd been working. And I've now become a big believer in staycations. Have time for your family, turn your phone off, get sleep. And what's the old adage? No one ever went to their deathbed saying they wish they had spent more time at the office. Rule number 5. Hyman Roth has been dying from the same heart attack for 20 years. That was Michael Corleone. Honesty. Don't cry wolf. Don't threaten actions you're not willing to take. Don't allege you can do more than you can. Know how to evaluate your case. We all know people who bluff, who are not honest about what facts they have, what information they have, what they think they can do. And after a while, when we have to deal with these people, we know they are bluffing, and that impacts how we deal with them. Now, there's a difference between confidence and bluffing. We don't want people who don't have confidence in what they're doing. We certainly don't want people in a sports arena yelling, "We're number 14." So there certainly are times that little bluffing is okay, but there are all kinds of things that are not honest. It may be that you actually make affirmative representations that are not true. That's a pretty clear case. It may be a reckless disregard for the truth. It could be half-truths. It could be what you say is true. You're just leaving out sort of the salient facts that someone really needs to know. Or what about silence, when you don't answer at all and you fail to disclose something? But even if what you do is not illegal, unethical, or unprofessional, constant bluffing and puffery, and you don't deliver what you say, all affects your credibility. It also affects your relationship with your clients, where you say you're going to do something and you can't. So being realistic and trying to minimize what you are not able to do really makes you a great deal more respected. Decisive people have reputations like that. They know where they're going. It's not always a straight line. It could be linear. It could be one step forward, one step back, 2 steps forward. But it's why some people say they have a small rear view mirror and a great big windshield. It's important to look ahead, learn from your mistakes, but don't relive them. I mentioned George Washington before. Number 5 may be one of my favorite, and it took me a while to exactly figure out exactly how I could use it. But number 95 is, after you eat the cherries, don't spit the pits under the table. And that goes back to the issue of mistakes. We all make mistakes. Don't try to hide them. Don't spit your cherries under the table, because someone's going to find them. So what often gets people in trouble is not the mistake, but it's the hiding of the mistake. Stop, look, and listen. Stop to give yourself time to make an informed decision. Look for those who can give you the full picture. Listen to what others have to say. Then you're really in a position to give and take appropriately. Number 6, Don Vito. You cannot say no to the people you love, not often. That's the secret. And then when you do, it has to sound like yes, or you have to make them say no. You have to take the time and trouble. Reaching agreement. Oh, I guess I need to do my next one. Reaching agreement. I think what Don Vito is saying is the best way to reach an agreement is consensus. When you can discuss an issue and get the other side to either agree with you, and if you can't do it, get them to understand why you have to say no, or get them to say yes to what it is that you want. It's the way to get people on the same page. You know, we all recognize that negotiating includes, some give, some take, some puffery. But eventually, the reason people reach agreement is that they understand not reaching agreement carries a greater risk. And that's really what you're hoping for. There's also a difference in how you approach it. If someone makes a request and you say, no, but, and then you say something, as opposed to, why, yes, if. When you start off with no, the but is just a qualifier, and all the person will likely hear is no. But if you start off and say yes, if, they are much more likely to be willing to accept what the condition is that will get them the yes. The first shows a closed mind. The second shows a much more open mind. And it's an easier way to get people to buy into our ideas. Or as our mothers would say, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Or you don't catch flies by being nice to them. You catch flies by being nice to them. And so people can really accept no when they think you've considered their needs. How do you get people in that framework? I guess if 1744 and George Washington wasn't old enough, how about 350 BC? That was Aristotle, Plato's student who was Socrates' student. And he was the author of the 3 means of persuasion. He used to call them proofs. And they serve as the basis for credibility. Maybe perhaps the foundation of civility, but they also serve in how we reach agreement. And the 3 proofs are logos, logic, convincing someone, pathos, the emotions. What is it that makes you want to move in their direction? And ethos, the moral character of the speaker. That's the one that takes years to build up. Edward R. Murrow, for those of you old enough to remember Edward R. Murrow, stated it a bit differently, but put it in modern terms. To be persuasive, we must be believable, logos. To be believable, we must be credible, pathos. And to be credible, we must be truthful, ethos. So even today, 350 BC, maybe a while ago, but it is still very relevant. Number 7, try the veal. It's the best in the city. Advice, giving and taking. You need to learn to ask and take others' advice. People are often happy to help if all you have to do is ask. One of my favorite quotes from an anonymous source is, be strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need help, and brave enough to ask for it. So what are some tips on giving advice? Before you open your mouth to share your wisdom, check your brain one last time to make sure what you're going to say makes sense. You might even ask the person if they would like some advice. Listen to the person's body language. They may be telling you they really don't want it, and know the limits of your expertise. So what about taking advice? More often than not, the person giving the advice, our heart is in the right place. And even if you didn't ask for help, it doesn't hurt to listen. You're not asking for it, you're asking for the advice or willing to listen to the advice. You're not asking for permission. And it's okay to smile and say thank you, that you appreciate their thoughts, but you're not required to take it. Clemenza, leave the gun, take the cannoli. Evaluating alternatives. I like to say it's knowing what's important, because when you evaluate alternatives, things that are important change. What may be important one day may not be important the next day. I used to like to tell associates when I hired someone, who's the most important two people in the courthouse? And they would invariably say the judge and would be stymied about the second. And I would always say wrong. The judge is way down on the list. The most important person is the clerk who's going to take your filings, because if you've made a mistake, they'll help you correct it before the time lapse. And the second most important person is the judge's secretary, who will make sure that your pleading gets to the top of the stack or your request gets to be asked to the judge. So what's important is not always what it seems, but it helps you when you evaluate that, what to do, what not to do, how to proceed. I mean, how many times has someone you never expected was important? I'm going to tell a little story about myself. Eric knows my whole family, and I think we're probably pretty okay. I mean, I know how to use a slide rule, or at least I did years ago. My husband has a PhD, taught at Purdue for 50 years, so we know how to get around the block. Well, we were in San Francisco, and I was at a meeting, and we had some time off, and we decided to go to a baseball game. And I don't know how many of you have ever been on the BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit system in San Francisco, but it's very confusing. So my husband and I are all dressed, ready to go to the ball game, and we go into the BART station, and there are no people. And this was many years ago, and there still were no people, just a machine that you use to buy your ticket, and a huge poster about how you made that determination. And it depended on what day of the week and what time of day and how long you were going to be gone and all kinds of things. And my husband and I were standing there for quite some time reading this, trying to figure out how to buy our tickets from San Francisco to Oakland. When a homeless gentleman approached us, I assumed he was going to ask for money. But he looked at us and said, you know, I've been watching you two for a while, and these machines are very confusing. I know how to work them. Can I help you get your ticket? And he proceeded to ask us the information, and in probably less than a minute, we had our ticket. And we thanked him graciously. But if you had told me in the morning when I was getting dressed to go to the ball game that the most important person I would meet that day was the homeless man in the BART shelter, in the BART office, I would have said you were crazy. But you know what? That homeless man was the most important person I met that entire day. So again, remember, you don't always know. And outcomes have risks, and it's important to evaluate that. Part of your job in looking at alternatives is to weigh the benefits and the risks. And maybe sometimes half a loaf is better than no loaf at all, because tomorrow you may be able to get the other half of the loaf. But all of that depends on how you understand what is important. And always remember that Plan B may end up being a better alternative than Plan A as you change your ideas. And sometimes you just have to trust your own gut about what's important. I remember reading that when the person who established FedEx was in college, that was the answer to a test to create some company or system. And the professor gave him a C, saying that it's an interesting concept, overnight delivery. It's interesting, but you get a C because the idea is just not feasible. So have faith in your own evaluation as well. And then there's the old sailor's quote, pessimists fret about the wind, optimists expect to change, but realists adjust the sails. So in weighing your alternatives, you may have to adjust your sails. Number 9, Sonny Corleone again. We go to the mattresses. That's problem solving. Sometimes an answer needs some time. You don't always have the luxury of an immediate answer, nor maybe do you want to. I've always thought it was important that when you hit the reply button on the email, it should require, if you do it within a minute, that you have to do it with 2 hands. And if you're going to hit reply all, maybe you have to have 3 hands, or at least require a delay. How many times have we been angry and sent something off and then regretted it? When I was a lawyer, my secretary used to sit with me when I opened the mail. And depending on how angry I was, would be inverse proportion to how long it took her to type my letters. And by the time she would get letters to me that I was really annoyed about, I wasn't quite so annoyed when hours had gone by because I'd done so many other things. So sometimes it's important to just take some time. I like to refer to John Dewey, an early 20th century philosopher who developed what we call a system of reflective problem solving. And it's a good way to look at any decision that you have to make. You have to define the problem. You have to understand what the problem is. If you want a solution, how did it start? You have to analyze the problem. Can you agree on exactly what the problem is? What's the history of the problem? Decide the criteria for a solution. What's it going to take to resolve this? List all the solutions. Some will ultimately be better than others, so you have to evaluate each solution. And then select the solution that doesn't create more problems than it solves. Always a good way, especially if you've gone to the mattresses and you have a little time to think about it. And last, and I'm going to leave some time, I think, if anyone has any questions. Number 10, Don Corleone. Great men are not born, they grow great. Paying it forward. While you give much, you gain much when you pay it forward. Like confidentiality, it builds trust. Think of the people that you deal with, that you trust. You can't buy it. It's built one step at a time. An interesting issue is how did the whole concept of mentoring begin? Mentoring first appeared in a poem by Homer, who was a Greek poet who lived in 800 BC. He was the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey, those Greek words that we heard in school. And it appeared in the Odyssey. Mentor was Odysseus's good friend who stayed behind during the Trojan War. You know, that's the one with the wooden horse and the people in the horse. And he stayed home to watch over Odysseus's son, Telemachus, and he helped him prepare to take over the family responsibilities. And from that, the term has become one who teaches, one who gives help, one who advises. So it's been around a long time. It's going to be around for a lot longer. And mentoring doesn't require a formal process. It can be an informal way. You can sponsor someone on a single issue, on a spot thing that you see. It doesn't have to be formal. And you make the rules. When you pay it forward, you're helping someone else's life to make it easier. It often causes me to reevaluate why I do something, why I want something. You're constantly improving yourself when you're helping someone else because you're reevaluating yourself and what you do and what you stand for. It reinforces kindness. What are the characteristics of a good mentor? And these are usually for mentorships that last a little bit longer. A good mentor is to motivate, but that can even be a short term. You're a sounding board. You're a good listener. Sometimes you're just there. You get to know your mentee. You develop a mutual trust. You understand the mentee's hopes and expectations and help them gain that. You might help the mentor set goals and overall objectives. Maybe not just for this issue. Maybe it's a matter of learning to read more, think more, do more. And you brainstorm. Objectives should be reasonable and attainable. Understand why something is right and not. And I wish I could give appropriate credit to the person, but this is another anonymous thing that I saw about mentoring goals should be smart. They should be specific. They should be measurable so that someone knows if and how they can reach the goal. They should be achievable. Can someone really meet the goal, particularly is it realistic? And time. Can that goal be reached? Can the success be achieved? And remember Anna from the King of Siam, who said, if you're a teacher, by your students you'll be taught. And one of my favorites is Muhammad Ali. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Thank you. And I'm open for questions.
No, that was great, Judge Maggie. I appreciate that very much.
It could be on this, on the court, and anything you're curious about.
Okay, no, certainly. So one of the questions.
Hey, Maggie. Mary Marsh here.
Hey, how are you?
Okay. I'm good. Where is Donald stationed? What is his command?
He is the executive officer of the USS Spruance, and he will do that. That's second in command. He will do that for about 18 months, and then he will fleet up to be the captain. It's a Aegis destroyer. But interestingly, Spruance, Admiral Spruance from the Battle of Midway, is from Indianapolis. He went to Shortridge High School, so kind of serendipity.
And how did he survive the summer without baseball?
Well, it was tough, but I think he probably watched some on television. And I think he probably watched his son who's in T-ball.
Yeah.
Mary and I go way back also.
No, certainly. So one of the questions we had to do with your last point on mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
And why does it feel like people respond better to mentors that are not related to them compared to their own family members? It's easier to preach to the choir than your family. Is that true?
I think so. I mean, I don't know what closeness breeds contempt. I don't know. I just think sometimes when you get it from someone else and it's someone you respect and someone who's given you time, you're more apt to listen. I mean, I think family members obviously will always set an ethical and moral tone to their family, but I think it's really important to have mentors that are not part of that inner circle. People who have proven to be successful in what they do. And then you sort of expect your family to help you. But when someone outside your family helps you, maybe there's a little different level of appreciation or willingness to listen. Maybe it's not even a question of appreciation.
No, certainly. And then you had touched on your staycation, which I love. working with my dad, sometimes it doesn't really look so good if I take pure vacation. So a staycation goes over a little better where I'm still on my phone, but noticeably out of the office and doing things around the city. So with 2020 being as stressful as it has been with civil unrest, the pandemic, what are your thoughts on how not to worry so much about your job and your family? I personally have a hard time sleeping at night sometimes. I mean, you have so many little situations going on at the same time, and there's always going to be very positive and negative kind of polarizations. But how do you curtail worry?
You know, I think, you know, as I said, you know, if you web surf mindfulness there, you know, whether you're into yoga or something, I think one of the other problems is we worked remotely, as many people have, for quite a while, several months. And it becomes even harder, at least when you're at your office and you get in your car to go home, or you walk to your home, there is that division. When you're working remotely at home, you're there. Oh, well, it's 8 o'clock. Maybe I'll go back to the computer and do. So I think it's important to set boundaries for yourself, that you have a work time. I think that was one of the things that I really appreciated about the staycation. I was much more conscious of not doing work, of not answering work phone calls. When I'm on vacation, I will still frequently monitor my phone or monitor my computer, even though I'm not physically there. So ironically, I think I spent more time for myself when I had the staycation, because I was much more conscious that that's what I was doing, and that, as my friend would say, the sun is going to come up tomorrow if I don't answer that email. I could still see what emergencies were, but an awful lot of things were not emergencies and could wait, or I could assign other people to answer those things. And some of it just takes a lot of work, a willingness to understand how you de-stress, what you can do. And remember, no means nourishing oneself. It's okay to say no.
Certainly, I appreciate that. So your line about a small rear view mirror and a great big window, you know, not living in your past mistakes, your point of saying no, like, we'll get off the wall investment ideas all the time. Oh, the stock trading at 2 cents is a real winner. And I want to, so no is easy there. But one of the questions was, have you made any decisions that you regret making? I mean, in the back of my mind, I think I've told maybe 3 or 4 people not to buy Tesla stock over the years, which is up, you know, 10,000% over the last 10 years. So do you have any decisions you regret? And
sure. Hindsight's 20/20, you know, and, you know, we wouldn't be human if we didn't regret something. Maybe it's a comment we made. Maybe it's that email that we hit reply or reply all too quickly and we regretted it. I can't imagine that there's anybody who hasn't done or said something or been involved with something that they regret. Maybe saying you're sorry if it's to another person. Maybe it's just moving on. I can't imagine that everybody doesn't have something that they wish didn't happen.
Yeah.
Eric, Greg Silver. Eric, I wanted to compliment Maggie about some rules to live by, and I think we could all find something from this today to think about a better life. I think that we could provide, and one of the interesting concepts that I saw yesterday, I watched a seminar with Lee Hamilton and Richard Lugar's seminar from Bloomington. Compromise is the only way we ever get anything done in this country, and that's why we have the laws that we have and the good things that we have, and we can always make them better. But without compromise and constantly saying no, that doesn't really work. Yes, no is a negotiating tool, but always saying no is not the answer as well. So it's a compromise that I'm sure Congressman Hamilton has espoused over many, many years, and with Richard Lugar, who's now gone, but I know that Marge knows that. And, you know, your statements today about working together is something that we need to realize how fortunate we are in many respects, and how we need to work out things for others and think about what we're doing for other people.
That compromise is the half loaf that I talked about.
Right.
Sometimes a half loaf is better than no loaf at all.
That's right. Agree.
So, Judge Maggie, you have been active in legal nonprofits your whole career. If we give you a minute to kind of touch on one of the pet projects you've been passionate about over your career, about, you know, Indiana Bar Association, IU Law Alumni Association, is there anything you feel is especially pertinent or prescient in 2020?
Well, one of the ways Mary and I became good friends was giving back to the law school and working with law students, ensuring that they know it's an honorable profession. It carries with it responsibilities. Doing what we can to help increase the pool of people who might not have originally thought about going to law school, and working with young lawyers. We were both very active in the law school, and that was very important to me. I really found the law school to be very nurturing, and I hoped to be able to pass on some of that. It's a wonderful school. It's a wonderful profession. It wasn't McKinney when I went there, but it's been something. It's been an activity that I have found very important. It's why I hire a new law clerk every year, because it's part of my mentoring. It's something that I enjoy. It makes me think about why I do what I do, and why I have some of my beliefs. And I have 3 law clerks, and adding a new person every year really changes the dynamics, and it really helps understand why we do what we do and how we do. I get new ideas from these young lawyers are like little puppy dogs. They're excited about being a lawyer, and they've got great ideas, and it's wonderful. And the dynamics change when you have different people. And I think that's been one of the most rewarding things in my now 22 years being a judge.
I appreciate that. What level of ethics are represented here in Indiana compared to other locales you may have knowledge of, particularly in the legal profession, but any others you wish to comment on?
You know, I think one of the things that's different about Indiana is we are a relatively small legal community. And if you practice law, whether it's California or Texas or Illinois, Chicago, you may never run into the same lawyer twice. In Indiana, regardless of the area that you practice in, you are going to run into the same lawyer again and again. And it's one of the things that I really liked about bankruptcy, because in many bankruptcy situations, you've got a creditor's attorney, a debtor's attorney, and the trustee. And on any given day, it's entirely possible that you will be with those same other 2 people, but you will all be wearing a different hat. And so it's impossible to take absolutely outlandish positions, because if in one day you are representing the creditor and the next day you're with those same 2 people, but now you're the debtor's attorney, if you've taken really outlandish positions, you're going to hear it right back. So I think in that regard, Indiana is a little unique, because we just keep dealing with people again and again. And so as a result, your reputation is going to precede you. People are going to know how you handle yourself and your clients and your negotiations. And I think it has led to a much more collegial bar than I have seen in other locations. I don't know, thoughts from other?
I agree. I agree entirely in that regard. Of course, it gets a little boring to talk to the same people, but sometimes. But no, I'm kidding. I wanted to ask you one last question. And I want to thank you for being our guest today. How important has been faith, your faith, growing up, your parents and faith, as far as your ethical beliefs today? As I know, very important to me. But what about you?
You know, I think, as what I said earlier about, your family sets your moral and ethical position. And I think that's really part of the component of it is treating other people as you'd like to be treated. Believing in that moral code, that ethical code that you were raised in that goes hand in hand with faith.
And pushing that forward to other people, on your kids. Yeah.
And maybe it's an unconscious thing. It's just the way you behave. Yeah. It's the way you've been brought up, the way you treat other people with respect, with trust. It's part of who you are. It's why you are who you are.
Those are key words, respect and trust. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. As a question to kind of close on, I was baptized with my son. I wasn't baptized growing up, so my son and I were baptized together. And raising our kids in church is our part of mentoring our kids and our family and the community. So again, thanks everybody for your time today. Judge Maggie, we will make a small donation in your name to Project 44, an Indianapolis-based nonprofit created to raise awareness of the National Bone Marrow Donor Registry.
Really important.
Next week, we'll be hosting another Zoom meeting, December 10th, with Doug Hemmig from C-SPAN. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you. Have a good holiday, everybody.
Right,
Stay safe. Wear your mask.